Welcome back to the Carp Chronicles podcast, episode number 50. And before I jump into what this episode is all about, I just want to say thank you without getting too cheesy or anything like that. But this is 50th episode that we've ever done. And I didn't necessarily think that we'd come this far when I first started this podcast. So thank you so much for listening. I'm glad many of you enjoy it. I'm sure some of you don't enjoy it, and then I'm sure you stop listening, which is absolutely fine. But for those of you who stick with us, keep downloading, keep commenting, liking, leaving reviews, I really appreciate it. And I genuinely mean that. You know, I definitely wouldn't be here without you guys listening and supporting the podcast. So just wanted to say thank you very much. It genuinely is appreciated. This episode, of course, is the second part to the recent interview I did with Stephen White. You can expect much of the same, pretty much just bait related, and how Stephen would target different carp and what he does with this, that and the other. Forewarning, and I know many of you are going to roll your eyes now, but of course I'm several beers deep at this point. So I've had quite a few beers in this second part. So apologies if I'm not getting the best out of Stephen and not asking the best questions I could be. I've promised myself that next episode I will drink much less. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Of course, we are proudly brought to you by BP Milling. Go ahead, check out BP Milling at bpmilling.co.uk. Awesome company, awesome guy that runs it, and they sell some awesome products. Check them out, please. As well as that, just lastly, of course, go ahead, check out my own little bait company, which is optibaits.com, which is basically my ideas of how bait should be. I've been rolling bait for the best part of 20 years. And of course, I get to speak to lots of interesting bait makers and companies and sort of industry leaders in certain regards from this podcast. And I kind of fuse everything together and bring out the products which I think are missing from the market. And it's the products that I want to use, and it is the products that I do use in my own angling. So very, very close to that passion project. Don't do it for money. The business owes me money, so it's nothing like that. But it's just something that I actually really, really enjoy doing. So go ahead, check that out, optibaits.com. That's it for the intro. I hope you enjoy this episode with the awesome Mr. Stephen White.
I think to some extent, especially with mirrors, that food value really helps. I think if you're pre-baiting, then food value is a lot.
We've kind of touched on this before. Well, we have touched on it before, actually, in detail. But why do you think that food value is more important for mirrors than it is for commons?
Well, one, they're a genetic freak, and they're inbred, and they're bred to be big. But mirror carp historically were bred for the table. They were a genetic aberration with fewer scales. They were inbred to eat, and it's like Labrador. Apparently, 80% of Labradors have a genetic mutation where they can't stop eating, so they're highly trainable because they're food orientated.
Yeah.
Well, in carp fishing, you've got your wild type carp, which you like your working line, you know, like your wild mongrels, I suppose. It's a bad analogy, this. I mean, the point is, I think mirror carp are bred to be gluttons because they farmed fish, whereas a lot of your commons are wild. They're more of a wild fish. I mean, apparently commons have got a higher proportion of red fibres than the mirrors. Mirrors have more fast switch white muscle fibers, and apparently commons have more stamina slow twitch red muscle fibers. So they've got a different musculature for a start, which must have some metabolic implication. I'm not saying obviously there's different strains of commons and what have you, but as a generalization, they must have different metabolic pathways. So a variation on it.
Have you looked at requirements for extra scales? I mean, I know it sounds silly, but obviously commons have a lot more scales. Yeah. They require certain nutrients. Calcium is the obvious one, but I think there's a bit more to it than that. Have you looked into that side of things?
I haven't, to be fair. Because what my thinking about commons is, from from the catch results, they like certain things, and most, from what I can gather, they seem like common seem to like tigers, don't they?
Yeah, why do you think that is? Color, food signal. What do you think?
Potentially fat content.
Fat in a tiger nut.
Potentially,
Very, very low fat tiger nuts.
they're not that low.
What percent fat is a tiger
Not
nut?
a clue, but basically tiger nuts are only fat, sugar, and fibre. There's rock all protein in a tiger nut. There's not a lot, is there?
There's not much fat either, though.
I think there's a obviously I can't access my phone, but there's a reasonable bit of oil in tiger. Sure, there is, because you can get tiger nut oil for a start.
I think I'm pretty sure they're fairly low in fat. They're low in protein, obviously. Like really, really low in protein.
That's what I'm saying. So the only things in it is sugar and fat.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much fat in tiger nuts. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure there isn't, to be honest.
No, but the point is, common seem to like tigers, don't they? I found that anyway. I don't really use tigers, but certainly put tiger nut flour in a bait.
Yeah, I mean, but you've also got the prebiotic nature of tiger nuts.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying before. I think the attraction comes from the formation of organic acids on the fat content, whatever that fat content is, by bacterial action on the substrate of the prebiotic fiber.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I think the attraction in tiger nuts is. I don't think it's sugar.
No, but I don't think it's fat.
No, but it's fermented fat. It is fat because it's fermented fat. The fat has been anaerobically fermented into organic acids. That's the attraction in tiger nuts, as far as I can work out. It isn't the fat per se. It's the fact that when you anaerobically ferment fat, you get N-butyric and isovaleric and caproic and all that.
I mean, as well, to go back to something that's topical of this podcast, is the protein need of animals potentially, and them eating until they get it. I mean, a fish has got to eat a fuckload of tiger nuts.
Absolutely.
To get its daily quota of protein. I don't think it would ever get.
It isn't going to get it, is it?
No, it's not going to get that. I mean, I think it's around about 7% protein. Tiger nuts,
but I don't think that 7%
is available.
Is bioavailable, is it?
Not at all. But in the same respect, I think the fat is very low as well. And I don't think that's that available either. I got to be honest. I might be wrong. Again, I might be making a fool of myself, but I'm sure the fat in a tiger nut is very low. In fact, I'm certain of it. And I don't think that fat is available because any macronutrient can be bound up within the structure of a food.
Absolutely. Stuff. Same with peanuts, isn't it? To some extent.
Yeah.
You see what the shit out when they're eating even a nut bait, a peanut bait. It's basically peanut butter.
Yeah. But I mean, again, like peanuts, one of my favorite baits. I think, obviously time and a place for them. You have to prepare them properly. You have to use them, well. But that's another freaking great bait, which not many people use.
Well, what I'm saying is that in terms of peanuts, I've never used them as a peanut. But I would imagine that certainly in warm water, the only thing they're getting out of a peanut is some fat. Because a peanut's 40% protein, bound up in a lot of fibre, it's bound up in fat, and when they crunch it up, it's not coming out as, peanut protein is in terms of peanut is not bioavailable to a carp because they've got a rudimentary digestive system. It's high fibre and it's going to shoot through them. The only reason nut mixes work in winter is because they fly through them. They're not getting any. You get a nut mix in winter, and and it's just going straight through the carp. The carp's getting not a lot out of it, but it's coming out of the back end, so they'll keep eating it.
Yeah, this is a bit of a bugbear of mine. There's a lot of so-called bait experts and companies and things. They're basically just touting about how quick their bait goes through the carp. Well, great. It's very easy to design a bait that fucking flies through a carp. How much of the goodness contained within that bait are they actually assimilating? It's very fucking easy to get
especially
a bait
in a low food value bait like a nut mix, which is not a high food value bait anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shitloads of fiber, bang a load of spices on there, some capsaicins to fly through the gut tract, and you've got a bait that will fly through them quickly, irritate them on the way, and it's actually doing them very little good. It's not to say they won't keep eating it, because they obviously will.
No, they will.
Yeah, and they will. And
the protein leakage hypothesis sort of stands true to that.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you look at something like, say, using a really rich fish meal with hydrolyzed ingredients, with digestive aid like Brocastel, then and fish meal's highly digestible, not highly digestible, but to a carp it's fairly digestible. Even though a lot of that's going to be coming at the back end, they're going to get maximum benefit from that bait in terms of food value in reasonable water temperatures. So if you were pre-baiting a lake with, especially if you've got mirrors in it, big old mirrors or mirrors generally, then I think they'll keep coming back to that spot. The higher, within reason, the better the food value you put in of the bait you're putting in if you're pre-baiting, then I think the food value is going to keep them coming back.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get a definite nutritional benefit from it, which if you're only fishing like I fish, then I'm not entirely sure how much you can assess the nutritional benefit in that 48 hours, given there's loads of other baits. There could be loads of other baits in your swim already. I think some fish definitely like fish meals because they like the taste. Certainly, probably within 24 hours, there's potentially some nutritional benefit and they'll come back for it. But I think with pre-baiting, there's a massive edge to feeding a nutritional bait. And I think, that's much more important for pre-baiting than it is just turning up to a lake and fishing. Which is basically, I design my baits now, my baiting approach. I turn up, like when I turned up at Acton, I just took a fish meal. I think I tried my nut mix because I had some in the freezer. I caught my nut mix, but I went in with a fish meal, and but no one else was on a fish meal on that lake.
So, I want to talk to you about this. All right, okay, carry on for now. Carry on.
No, just saying, I went in with a heavy fish meal, like a 30% LT, 10%, CPS P90 and all the rest of it. Nothing wondrous by anybody else's standards, but no one else on that lake was using a fish meal. And if they were, the odd person was using one of the big companies' fish meals, which, as there's not much fish meal in them.
Yeah, no.
If you're using a really rich fish meal with all the bells and whistles, you just haven't come across it for a while. And it really did seem to make a difference with certain fish, but not others.
But yet, somewhere like Grenville, right? They're big fish. They have a big dietary requirement. By default, they must. They have to, right?
Yeah.
I've never fished the place, never stepped foot on there. I imagine it's not exactly riddled with naturals, right?
It is. It's very rich. Massive bloodworm hatches, chironomid hatches.
How rich? How full of weed is it?
Unbelievably weedy.
Really? See, I'm totally off the mark then. I didn't envisage it like that.
Yeah, but what also you don't know is Paul, the owner, puts a feed bait in a feed boilie.
Yeah,
which is a very rich fish meal.
yeah. See, I'm not familiar with the venue, and the route I was going to go down is I now realise is not applicable. So yeah,
But because the shoal fish, they'll just Grenville is just about getting on fish. I don't think even as much as how much of a baiter I am. I don't think bait is as important on Grenville. It's just fine. It's just getting on fish. If you're
yeah.
on fish, you're going to catch because the shoal fish, they're massive. The average size is 30 odd pound now. I'm not exaggerating. I bet there's over 730s in there. There's over 100 and there's probably
I just
150,
can't fathom.
150 40s. Yeah, but you
Ridiculous.
can blank your ass off all season because it's such a big lake. If you're not on fish, you're hundreds of yards away from fish.
730s.
Yeah.
When I was fishing in Cornwall, there wouldn't have been 730s. Right. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's many
when
years
I went
ago,
on
but
Nipton in 2015, Anthony said there's between 30 and 50 30s in this lake now as we speak. And he said it'll do a 40 within the next, between 18 months and 5 years, it'll do a 40. And at that time, the local lads were saying, why are you driving down here? I said, because there's more 30s in this lake than there is in the whole of Greater Manchester. So that's why I'm doing a 270-mile round trip. I thought I was mental. I said, it's just not. And the lakes, what I've got the 30s in, are like park lakes, where it's just, some people are full-time on the lakes. You've got Gyro Joes on the lakes, literally living on the lakes. You've got 3,000 people on a bank holiday milling about.
mm.
So yeah, Grenville just blows your mind, but it's incredibly hard. If you get on fish, it's not. The fish are dead. If you get on fish, it's so easy to catch because, like my UK PB, hasn't been out for 3.5 years because Paul's got graphs of every fish of every weight. He's got pictures of both sides of every fish from stocking to whatever weight they are, and he plots graphs of the weights. So he knew that fish that I had hadn't been out for 3.5 years. Some of the Grenville fish come out 2 or 3 times a year, and then he'll show you a picture. He say, "Oh, this one hasn't been out for 9 years." So they're not pressured fish.
Well, just because they're not coming out doesn't necessarily mean they're not pressured. If you're saying there's 700, that there's so many fish in there, they can't be pressured.
No, they're not pressured because I asked Paul, the owner, I said, how many fish do you reckon come out a year? And he said, well, I don't know, but I'm guessing about 1,000. Well, there's 1,800 fish in the lake. So that means on average, they're not getting caught once a year. And some fish are coming out 2 or 3 times a year, the friendlier ones. So some just aren't coming out. So they're not pressured. Fish hasn't been caught for, obviously it could have been lost. But what I'm saying is, if a fish hasn't been out for 3.5 years, it isn't pressured. It's just staying out of the way of angling pressure, or it's a slow, whatever it is. But they're incredibly easy to catch on Grenville if you get on them. It's getting on them. You just sit there and you're miles away. Do you know what I mean?
So yeah. So to get into the mind of Stephen White a little bit, right?
Jesus, you don't want to do that.
Oh, fucking hell, dangerous territory, right? But so once you've done at Acton,
yeah,
you've obviously got Grenville. You've got the other lake you mentioned,
Girton. Yeah.
Let's say there's another lake presented to you. Let's say, I don't know, 300 acres. There's 8 or 9 carp. They're around about 40 years old. Let's say they're upper 30, scrape of 40, but they're fucking old warriors. Beautiful fish. Not. They don't all look the same. There might be a few stockies in there as well.
A2 Brute.
They're what I would call proper fish. 30 acres, not very well fished. Would you find yourself just saying, nah, fuck that. That is not me. I'm going to Grenville where there's 730s and God knows how many.
No, it depends where it was. Because you can only approach a lake like that by walking it and baiting it.
Let's say it's the same distance as Grenville.
You can't fish. Yeah, you can't turn up to a lake like that and do your 48.
Why not?
Turn up and just set your bivvy up.
course you can.
You can, but it's not the way to approach a lake like that, is it? I don't think. That's a lake where you want to be on your toes all the time, baiting spots, and going off what you see. That's the exact opposite of what I do, because I want to be in my bivvy, chilling and enjoying my fishing. But I couldn't do that where it's 200 miles away each round trip. You know, if I've got a 350-mile round trip to walk a lake, you need to be walking it 4 or 5 nights a week, ideally, and putting baiting spots, ideally in the edge where you can see what's going on, and just seeing what the movements of the fish are.
How many weeks a year do you go to Acton?
Well, I reckon I do 50 nights easily. So at least 26 weeks a year.
Right.
For a 48.
So if you did 26 trips to a lake that we've just made up,
and
let's just say you spent I know you need to sleep, 40 hours walking, trying to find fish, 8 hours fishing, which is more than you'd need hours for fishing.
Yeah, precisely, yeah.
There's 8 or 9 carp. You 7 years, do you not think you'd catch them all?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But what I'm saying is I don't know any lakes like that.
No, we're just making. But
what I'm saying is
immature. We're making believe.
To me, it's about opportunity. If I had the opportunity to fish other lakes, then I would fish them. But it's opposite. I'm fishing with the best that I have available to me. Do you know what I mean? I'm not in the sort of social things. A lot of lads who fish down south or certain areas, like a lot of the Midlands lads who fish these tramp pits, which you know, they're guesting on them. The lads who've been doing it 30 odd years, they get the nod, they get the whisper to some special fishing here, and there's a few lads who'll hit that lake, and other lads will be walking it. But my point is, I've absolutely no knowledge, and everything's kept quiet. You know, lakes with special fishing that are not getting that much attention these days. It's omerta, it's a code of silence. Unless you know someone really well, you don't know about that.
But that is the beauty. You go and you find out yourself.
Absolutely, but there isn't anything up in the north. There's nothing. The closest things really to me is probably the Midlands, where you start getting big gravel pits down the A1, the M1.
It's got to be something.
Mate, you don't know how bad it is up here. Honestly, you've just no clue. It's probably like Cornwall. There just isn't. There really isn't. There's a few carp in various lakes, but they're not the sort of lakes I want to fish, because they're usually in not great areas. You know, there's a sort of local clique. They burn people's cars. Remember, like near Nipton, there's a place called Denton, and it had back in the day, years and years ago, it had a 40 in it, sort of 20 odd years ago. And there was one guy on there. Anybody turned up, he didn't know. He'd burned the car out. Just an absolute hooligan. And the lads on it's literally. He used to drive past it on the way to Nipton, and all the lads on Nipton had fished it 20, 30 years ago and said this fucking mental case just used to burn people's cars out. Just firebomb, you know, if you turned up there, just firebomb your car.
Brutal.
Yeah, because he wanted this fish to himself, this 40. I mean, back in the day, I thought it was rare as rocking horse too, wasn't it? But it's the same. It's the same with a lot of these big reserves. You won't know what's in it without. I haven't got the time to travel 100 miles each way to walk a lake that I don't even know there's any carp in it. 2 or 3 hours drive each way just to walk a lake and to work out whether you've got to have the knowledge. And if you haven't got the knowledge, then you're knackered, and it just isn't. It doesn't happen locally. I mean, the biggest fish sort of around here is Clifton, which is Manchester Park Lake. It's got Mr. Angry, which is the old Lancashire record. It does like 46. But you've got lads, I think there's about 20 fish in that lake. And you've got lads living on there, fishing for angry.
Mm.
And it's honestly, I went down on bank holiday. It was just chaos. Fair play to the lads who fished that, because it's just mental. You've got another couple of gravel pits. You've got Sale Marina and you've got Cholton Marina, which you've got both gravel pits. But again, they just, I mean, there's some waters in Cheshire. One of my mates is having a dabble of a special water in Cheshire. I'm not going to name it, but I've got a ticket for it, but I haven't done anything on it yet. But that's got some nice fish in it, and that's more like what you're talking about. But again, that's waters like that are about location, aren't they? You've got a lower stock. I think your time is best spent walking the lake and trying to find them, really, isn't it? It's just a different type of fishing.
Yeah, I don't think Dean's got anything like that either. But how far from Dean are you? You're up that kind of
Dean's
way,
Stokes. So Stokes about 60 miles, something like that.
Okay.
There's a few lads from Stokefish, Acton. It's not a million miles away from Acton. You're probably 30, 40 miles from Acton or what have you. Acton's sort of more towards Wales, really. You're going towards more Welsh border, West Midlands.
Shropshire, isn't it?
Yeah, Shropshire, yeah. Which is next to Wales. But Dean's sort of more in the middle on the M6 side. Like Stokes just off the M6.
Anything above Birmingham is like proper north to me. So
but the point is, I would imagine a lot of Stoke lads. There's lads from Stoke on Grenville. They're travelling down. The lads from Stoke go to Acton. There's a few decent waters in the Midlands. I can guarantee there'll be Stoke lads from that area on Girton. You get lads from Derby sort of going. They're on Girton. They come over to Acton. They go to Girton. So half the country is going to the same waters because from the north there isn't that much because the gravel pits don't really start until you get down the M1, the A1. All the Trent pits, there's loads, you've got A1 pits and loads of pits around the Trent because it goes alongside of the A1. I mean, I remember when I was on Selby, there was a lad from Reading area. And he moved up to Yorkshire, and he said there were more carp in a 5-mile radius from his old house than there was north of Sheffield.
I mean, last time we spoke, obviously we were talking about different carp and how to target them. Have you had any opinions change on that since we last recorded? Any sort of slight shifts at all, or have you just been continually backing up your previous thoughts on it all?
Well, I changed my baiting approach in 2018 when I went onto the golden balls and the fermented. The first 3 seasons I did on Acton, I was just using the fish meal, and I caught what I caught. I had some good fish. I had the biggest fish in the top lake, the biggest fish in the bottom lake. And some other fish, and then I wasn't catching the other ones, so I changed my baiting approach. And then out of the 10 left, last season I had 6 of them, so that reinforces. I had 6 out of 10 fish, and 5 of them I had twice within just over a year. So that backs up my theory that fish have certain preferences. And apart from the OT, they were all males. Big, long, sleek, sort of sleek males. So it's, and then this season, we've not gone through this season, but I've had a really good season this season since June. Like I said, I had the big lever again opening week. The week after I had the peach, and then a disastrous July and August, and then I've been back in September, and I've had. In 3 weeks, I had big pecks at 44 again, which was the fish I had the 14th of September last year. I braced that with a 28-pound stocky. The week after that, I had 3 originals, only to 33, but I set 7 fish. And the week after that, I had the exact same 2 fish. I had big pecks again at 44.6, and the 28 stocky again. I had the same two fish 14 days apart out of the same swim on the same bait. There's 250 fish, 230 to 250 fish in the top lake now with all the stockies. And I had the exact same fish 2 weeks apart. And Big Pecs normally does about 3 or 4 captures a year, but usually 1 or 2 of those are in open access. So on the syndicate, a lot of the seasons it comes out 2, maybe 3 times, and I had it twice in 2 weeks. And I've had it 3 times on the same bait in 363 days. So what I'm saying is, what for the fish that aren't eating the fish, or they are eating the fish meal, but the fish I'm catching on the golden balls and the fermented particle, they're on it. Given that I'm up against everybody else is on not everybody, but most people are on a different bait.
So Acton, you use fish meals and you use your
I use fish meals for the first 3 years, and then I swap straight up completely.
Yeah, I'm on about nowadays.
No, I'm using it's basically a 20% Super Gold 60 maize bait with pre-digested ingredients and a bit of bird food.
What's your reason for the Super Gold 60 Prairie Meal?
The colour.
Okay, yeah.
I just wanted a bright bait.
It's got protein in it. I don't know how.
Yes, it's 60% protein. It's not that it's reasonably bioavailable. It's just an energy bait. But it ferments well. Anything with maize in it, especially with Super Gold 60, seems to ferment well because when I turn that bait for Grenville for bags, it really turns well. You
got brewers in there as well, yeah?
No, Brocasel.
Okay. Yeah.
It does the same thing. But
same thing.
What I found is in the past that baits that turn well are really good. Like back in the day when I was on Selby, my nut mix used to have CC Moore used to sell a they used to call it a probiotic yeast powder, and then they stopped selling it. But I used to put it in my nut mix, and I suspect, but I don't know because it looks very much like Salmonax powder.
I don't remember that, to be honest. I don't know.
We're going back to 2013.
I was deep in bait rolling then. I can't remember.
Yeah, well, they used to sell the probiotic yeast powder. I used to put that in my nut mix. From 2011 to 2014, I used it in my nut mix. And when I saw Salmonax a few years later, basically CC Moore said, we're not selling it anymore. And then he went and hunted it out in the factory and they said, we've got 3/4 of a sack. Do you want it? I said, yes. So I bought 3/4 of a sack of this probiotic yeast. And then when it ran out, then I couldn't get it anymore. Well, my point is, I used to put the powder in the nut mix and then feed stimulants do a pre-digested liquid yeast, which is very much like the consistency of Marmite. It's like a treacle-like yeast, pre-digested yeast. I used to put both of those in my nut mix and it would turn. If I just had it in a bucket, it'd turn in 36 hours from fresh.
Do you use VCon or anything like that at all?
Well, I have in the past, but that's HVP's in my bait soak.
Yeah,
VCon's basically HVP.
Yeah. Do you got powdered HVP?
I use powdered HVP, but in my soak.
Yeah.
So it's better, it's more user friendly than VCon.
Yeah.
But it's effective. It's just VCon's just a paste version of.
Yeah.
If you left powdered HVP in a humid environment, you'd end up with a bag of VCon because it's very hygroscopic anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, HVP. I'm a big fan of HVP, which is like your Super Gold 60 though. It's maize protein, so when it starts turning, you get in some degree of hydrolyzation.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the. We're going back 10 years. CC Moore used to do online. He used to have the data sheets of all the products back in the day, and I seen the data sheet for wheat gluten, and it was, I think it was about 20%, 19 or 20% glutamic acid. So I thought, geez, if you get an hydrolyzed version of that, that would be fire. And I was trying to work out how to hydrolyze it effectively, and then years later, Glyn from Burton Bait Rollers, the late lamented Glyn, had some HPP powder, and he mentioned it to me, and I was like, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an absolute arsehole to put in a bait because it's so sticky.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the stickiest fucking ingredient I've ever touched.
Yeah, that and blood powder, stuff like that. If you stick a decent bit of molasses in a bait, that's good fun.
Mm.
But HPP is just an arsehole to use in a base mix. But I thought it's a good ingredient. Probably worth putting in a solid bag.
Yeah.
When we're talking about bags,
mm-hmm.
you know, there's a lot of things like probably carramine as well. You know, if you were fishing at a lake where you could get a quick bite, I think putting powders like that in your solids would be big mileage. You know, where you can cast a bag on them and you could potentially get a bite within a few hours. Then I think doing things like that with again my baiting approach is there's a time element to between baiting up. What I'm considering is the time element between the attraction in the bait, because it's an out and out attractor bait. And by an attractor bait, I mean half the time there's no flavors in there. It's about chemoreception. I'm looking at the time delay between sticking the bait out in the pond and when I'm anticipating getting a bite. And I'm trying to leverage the attraction to that presentation to best fit what I want it to do.
Yeah.
Like a lot of lads on Grenville are putting bare crumb in a bag, so it's just crumb. So I'm not sure how much of that crumb would be left after a certain period of time, given there's big undertow, you know, and it's crumb and there's, you know,
this is the thing, isn't it? And since we've been talking, I wanted to touch upon solubles and undertow and things like that. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but I'm just saying. So I'm looking at time. I'm trying to get. I think if I'm just fishing bags on Grenville, I want some longevity to that. As in, if it stays out overnight, then I want a certain level. I reckon some of the lads who are just fishing crumb, they're just fishing a single.
So, because they're fishing crumb in a bag?
Because they're putting crumb in a bag with deep water undertow. I don't think there's a lot, you know, within, say they've not had a bite for 5 or 6 hours, maybe 10 hours. I'm not convinced there's a huge amount of actual attraction there, because any solubility will leach out because of the particulate size of the crumb. And I'm not sure what attraction's in that bait in the first place, but with mine, one, it's turned, so I know exactly, I don't know exactly, but I've got a good idea of like the time delay of the attraction on it, because I've got powder in there and I've got nuggets in there. The bait's 23% hydrolyzed anyway. You've got the Belacan in the mix anyway, and then you've got all everything what goes with the bait being turned. And because you've got different particulate size in that bag. But when I had the brace of 40s in 2018, those bags went out by the time I'd set up, so that could have been 2-3 o'clock, and I had one just before first light in September and one half an hour after that. Okay. And the rods could have been 50, 60 yards apart. They were just pub chucked out about 100, 110 yards. but there was. I'm still confident that there was something there other than the hook bait. After sort of 15 hours.
Yeah. So when I do these podcasts these days, I'm very aware of the kind of questions we get from different points raised. So I'm always trying to kind of filter
preempt them.
Yeah. What will people that are listening to this, what will their questions be? What do they need answered? And I think probably a lot of them are thinking, okay, so solid bags then, how do I utilize this? How do I make the most of them? How do I make sure I'm not wasting my time? What would you say if you were to give the user a like an ultimate PVA bag guideline? What would you give them?
Well, the first thing I would consider is how often you want to recast, because that definitely is a game changer. If you can recast every 2 or 3 hours, then you want something highly soluble and powder and liquid in it, because you just keep recasting. So I've injected liquids into bags before now. I've just filled it up with pellets and then whacked some liquids in. I've put balls of Bellacan in. I've used. I mean, CC Moore used to do Bellacan powder. I've put that in before now. So the first thing is always that what application am I doing? If I'm not leaving that bait out for a long time, if I can keep recasting, then you can put anything in. I would literally. I mean, you can get powders from. BAF do all sorts of powders, don't they? I'm trying to think of the name.
I mean, yeah, you. So let's say you can recast frequently, but it doesn't mean that it's desirable to do so, because it presuming you've set up.
It might be on some waters, though. It might be desirable on some waters to recast often. If you're fishing solids on linear, then I'd probably be recasting every.
Yeah, we're not on linear. We're not on linear.
Right. This is what I'm saying about application.
We're on a big fish, a lower stock big fish venue.
But you're going to fish solid bags.
Yeah.
No. So I'm not knocking it, because it's the ultimate presentation of solid bag. Your rig isn't tangled, and there's a bit of food about it. Even if you.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I've got no hard and fast answer because it's just a made up scenario. You were talking about solid bags. It sounds interesting. It sounds like it's an area for experimentation. As I said earlier, I know what I would do if I fish solid bags, and I've started thinking about it recently. And it gives a lot of freedom, and it affords you to do certain things that you wouldn't be able to do if you were, spotting out particle or boilie or something. So I think it's interesting. I mean, it sounds like you've gone back to solid bags at several points in this talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like you've had a lot of success on them.
I had my first UK 40 on solids. I've had my UK PB at 51 on a solid.
Oh, there we go. Beautiful. So is it just down to the presentation that you would say you've accredited those captures to, or is it?
No. It's mega attraction. It's a soft braided hook, short, soft braided hook link, which no one uses apart from in solid bags.
Yeah,
you can't effectively cast a 3-inch soft braided KD tied hook link and think, well, that's presented. But
you
in a
can't
solid
effectively
bag,
cast any braided hook link, not any distance.
Well, no, but that's what I used for 3 years on Acton. My first 3 years was soft braid.
How far were you casting?
10, 15 wraps.
And you well, yeah, fucking hell, fair play.
No, but you had to hit the clip like a foot above the water.
And you got to watch it land, right?
You've got to watch it land, and it's just absolutely shite. But no one was doing it because everybody was fishing hinge stiffy.
Yeah.
But my point is, in a solid bag, it's presented.
Oh yeah.
So like I said, on Nipton, I had it on the spirulina pellets, dried with Nampla. So you've got the time release element there.
Yeah.
But lads have mixed I mean, back in the day, lads used to liquidize Belacan into Nambla to make a thick sauce. Pour that into a solid over your, put balls of paste in your solid bag. You get a few hours of attraction. We just paste.
Yeah, you don't need a bag though for that.
Basically, you just
mold it around the fucking lead.
Exactly.
Easy.
Exactly. The only thing you've got to do is make sure you put either a tiny. What I was doing on Grenville at first was putting a tiny stick, like a literal marble-sized stick, like a centimetre bag of the quarter long chuck, funnel web, making literally just like say a 12 mil diameter stick to go over my hook, and then I could get the nuggets in. So when I'm squeezing the bag down, I'm not impaling nuggets onto my hook.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you're putting paste in, you've got to make sure that anything you put in that bag is not knackering your presentation. If you're going to get a quickish, obviously, if you put paste in and it comes on your hook and 6 hours later, then it's not really going to knacker your presentation, is it? But if you've got something sticky within an hour and a fish picks it up, then there's a chance it's going to blow it back out. So you've just got to be mindful of that when you actually, the mechanics of making the bag. But if I was expecting a reasonably quick bite, I would make it more attractive in terms of liquids and powders.
I mean, if you're expecting a quick bite, a paste bait is the way to go, right? And I've spoken.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. I would put paste in, powders, and bits and bats. If I was anticipating a bite within 8, 12, 15 hours, then I would change it so there's more solid food, and I would get the attraction in by turning the baits. You know what I mean? The actual salt, what's going in of the solids, as in if I could use pellets, then I would soak the pellets up in stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm boiling only on Grenville. Solid bags aren't really the way I'm acting because it's silty and weedy. But if you can what I'm saying is, with solid bag fishing, it's about the time you're anticipating a bite. And that would determine how I set that bag up.
Let's say you didn't know. You didn't have a fucking clue. The bite could come within 30 minutes or it could come within 12 hours. That kind of time
I would go down either the soak pellet route or the turn boilie crumbed up, or mixture of both if the lake rules allowed it.
You wouldn't get any dry powders in there with some liquid.
I set things up with what I anticipate is going to happen. So if I thought the probability of a bite within an hour or two, then yes, I would do that. If I was anticipating a bite a good few hours later, then I wouldn't put the powders in, because depending on how far you're casting is how big your bag is. You haven't got a massive volume in a solid bag, so irrespective of what actually happens, how I fish is what I anticipate is going to happen. So if I anticipated a quickish bite, then the powders would go in. But if I wasn't, I would look for the longevity of the bag approach and thinking it's going to 8, 12, 15, 16 hours. And that's how I would tailor it, because I would be thinking, well, I'm looking at a bite at first light, or I'm looking at a night bite, or I'm looking at I'm casting it at 12 noon, and it might happen just before last light at 10 o'clock in the summer. So I'm still looking at 10 hours before I think that I'm going to get a bite on that. If you're fishing a hard lake, chances are you're not catching multiple fish.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a different ball game. Yeah.
Whereas if I was going to linear, it would all be powders and liquid.
Mad leak off. Yeah.
And just keep recasting.
Yeah. Your hot soak is something else that you sort of time, don't you?
Yeah.
We had a fucking ridiculous amount of messages about your hot soak, which I get, by the way. Absolutely. message in. I understand. You vary the concentration of different components given your expected bite time, right?
Yeah. But also, I make my bait like rubber bullets. The golden balls is 10% Oragel.
Yeah, that which is high.
Yeah, it comes out like rubber bullets, but then because it's 23% hydrolyzed, the only way it's going to stick together with a boiling hot soak, is if you gel it with 10% whey gel.
How soluble is that bait?
Well, it's 23% hydrolyzed.
Yeah, but is there other solubles in there, or is that the only solubles?
Well, you've got 10% whey gel, but whey gel isn't soluble once you've cooked it. 20% maize protein, CLO, semolina, and that's it. It's literally a colour bait, but then but it's also got 10% whey gel in it, so it's reasonably nutrition in that there's 20% Super Gold 60, 10% whey gel, which is Oragel 80, which is 80% protein of the 10%. So there's 8% good protein just in the whey gel. It's got Brocacel in it, CPSP 90. So it's a reasonable food bait. But what it is when it's washed out, it's fucking bright gold. It literally is bright gold. And then you put the hot soak on it. You can only put the hot soak on it if it's strongly gelled, because otherwise there'd just be nothing left of it.
Yeah. And what is for the listeners? What is the hot soak? What is that comprised of?
It's just citric and HPP.
People listening want to do it. What would they do?
What the problem is, right? It depends on the sensitivity of your carp to that mixture, because people who've tank tested citric have said it's repellent at really low levels, and some people have tried it in a fishing sense and it's repellent. The last 3 seasons I've caught last season I had 15 originals out of active and 9 stockies. I caught the second most originals, but I had, of those 15 originals, 5 of them were 40. The lad who had the most, he had 16 originals and 50 odd 60 stockies. And he had 2 40s in those 16 originals. That's telling me my baiting approach is highly selective to big fish. Now, I think if you took that approach to somewhere else with younger fish, that you wouldn't be repellent, because I'm not catching the stockies. This season, to play about, I've half the concentration, and so far this season from June, I've had 9 originals, 4 of which are 40, and I've had 16 stockies. So by halving the concentration, I've doubled the number of stockies.
If you I know what you're doing for rigs, but again, thinking about what people will be thinking about and what they'll want to be asking you, rig-wise, are you doing anything different?
Hinge stiffy. I'm just using this season, because I'm fishing up the top end lake and it's weedy. Well, I had the leather in when I fished the pot beds in opening week. I had the leather on in June. I had it on a KD, soft braided KD. But when I had it in the spring, I had it on a hinge stiffy, below like a 2-inch hinge stiffy. All my fish this year have all been on hinge stiffies. Well, it's not. It's a semi-stiff braided boom, and then just a chod section.
Yeah.
But I found a hook that I'm really, really happy with. First time ever, first pop-up hook. I thought, right, I'm happy with that.
Are you sharpening yourself?
Yeah. Pillar 4, cutting it down, but it's all generated from the feeding response for like the last 3, well, certainly the last 2 seasons, it's been the golden balls and the particle when the time's appropriate, and getting the level, the amounts, the actual quantity of bait right for the time for how much they're feeding. Sometimes you put in 6 midis bombs over it. That's only a mixture of boilie and particle. You know, the boilie and maize. That's not a lot of bait over one rod. Sometimes you're giving it the big one if you're anticipating a bigger. I've been not tramming up, but putting 2 rods out on one spot and putting a decent hit over that spot when I'm in a certain swim. But then I've got 2 rods out there. Because if you're getting a lot of night bites, trying to find small spots in weed, silty weed is an arsehole at night when you've not really got great far bank markers. So it's a combination of it. I know that lake pretty well. I can predict when certain fish are going to come out because I'm on my 7th season now. And the fish I've caught on a certain bait. I've predicted what I'm going to catch on these. You know, these fish, I'm pretty certain I can catch them on these baits, or I'm convinced. Whether I do or not is a different matter, but I've got the faith. It's almost like a religious fervor that I can catch those fish on this baiting approach. The last 4 I want. So it's getting in the swim, which is the hard bit on certainly on Acton, because they're all very good. Every angler on Acton is at least very good, and some are exceptional. So they're all switched on. You know what I mean? There's a lot of competition for a going swim. So it's getting in the swim. It's assessing how much you think they're going to need food-wise. Well, if you think they're having it, then you give them a bit more. In certain swims, if I'm putting 2 rods on one spot, then I can give them a decent hit over that because I've got 2 bites at my hook baits. And it's a different situation with the stockies. Now I've managed to sort of repel the stockies last season, so I got most of the fish I wanted. This season, I've reduced my stocky repellent to see if the last 4 fish that I can't catch, if the different levels of attraction if it's more accommodating to those fish. And so I'm suffering more stockies. Like when I'm putting two rods out on one spot, I've got silkweed in one of the swims. I've got silkweed at the front and the back of the spot, and the spot's not bad. The problem is when you get some of the smaller stockies, they pick the rig up. They don't drop the lead because they're naive, and then they kite through and then fuck your other rod up. So then, middle of the night, you've lost 2 rods. Your 2 banker rods on one spot you've lost, and then it takes about 2 hours in the middle of the night to sort it out, get all the silkweed out. It's just a fucking nightmare to sort that out. So, but I was that spot, I call it high risk, high reward. They're either going to take it out, or chances are I'm going to catch a big one. And that spot I'm fishing, Ryan's comes from that spot. In fact, my mate Kev had it last, I think a week and a half ago. He had Ryan's out off that spot a couple of days after I left it on the Friday night, just before the full moon, 46.8. And I said to him, I left on the Tuesday morning. I said, that fish will be out before I was coming back Sunday morning. I said, that fish will be out before I come back. And one lad had the OT, and I thought he's going to have Ryan's, and he didn't. And the next lad who followed him in, who was Kev, had Ryan's out off that spot Friday night. So it's a question of, when that fish is coming out, or I do now. I've got a good idea when it's going to come out. It's just trying to tweak it to try and catch those last 4 fish. Now I'm not sure where that fish is on my bait. I'm pretty sure I know it's come out on maize before. It comes out on ASM all the time. So I'm just trying to adjust my baiting approach to when I think that fish will come out. When it comes out, and I'm playing with the levels of attraction to see if it's not repellent to that fish by going high. Like the peach, I've had it twice, right? When I've used the full strength soak, and the first time I had the peach, I'd spotted out about 118 mil baits, and within 45 minutes the peach took it. with the full strength soak on it.
Mm.
And then the second time I had the peach, I only had the soak at half strength. But even with leading about and banging the bait out, I had the bite within 2 hours. So what I'm saying is that fish is obviously tolerant to a higher level of citric than the stock is. So you have to adjust. You've got to play with things like this for the fish on your lake. Because people, a lot, in homemade bait buffs, a lot have said if they've done tank tests or they put it in hook baits, then they haven't had any joy with citric in hook baits. So I don't think it's citric in the hook bait per se. I think it's their water.
So
and when they're anticipating a bite, if they bang a certain level of citric in a pop-up, and then the fish comes to it within an hour, there'll be a different concentration of citric in that hook bait than there will be 12 hours later.
Yeah. Citric acid is so well respected within, home rolling circles. I mean, for me, I've said this several times on the podcast. I've never really gone into why. I just think it's overrated. I think there are better organic acids out there.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I think there's I think it's pretty limited study that everyone's going off, and it's regurgitated.
It's got some done in 2003, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's, one guy that's respected says, oh yeah, it's really good because it's been in this study. Someone else regurgitates it. All of a sudden, loads of people are just saying the same shit, and it all comes from the same source. I don't think citric acid is anywhere near as good as some other organic acids. You obviously...
I'll put it this, it's not on my hook bait.
Well, yeah, there we go. Well, yeah, maybe you've sort of answered this question, but you obviously... Well, I thought you hold it in high regard. Obviously,
it's part of the armory.
Right.
I'm using an out and out attractor bait, and there's everything in that attractor bait from start to finish on a time release system. There's reasonable nutrition.
But your hot soak is comprised of citric acid, right?
Yeah, just citric and HVP. But what I'm saying is, I don't know how long that lasts. It also has different levels of penetration. If I soak it the night before, it has a different level of penetration than when I bang that bucket back in the freezer. I don't use it all.
Yeah, of course.
And if it's gone in the freezer 3 times, then it's soaked all the way through, and the bait is not much different from a paste.
Yeah.
So that is completely different. But what I'm saying is, the soak is only an initial attractor. Within how much is left within 12 hours? Well, I can answer that to some extent. It very much depends on the level of penetration into the bait. Whether if I make a bait, say I make a bait Friday, I air dry it overnight, I put the hot soak on it Saturday night, and I'm going fishing Sunday morning, then it won't be deeply penetrated in that bait because the bait's 10% orogel. It's like bullets. Conversely, 3 weeks later, if I've put 4 kilos in a bucket and I've hardly caught anything, or I've blanked 2 times, so the third time I take it out, it's penetrated all the way through. So then that has a much higher level in absolute terms, but also in concentration because it's all the way through.
Yeah, I get it.
So you can tell someone, right, this is what I do, but it won't necessarily be applicable to your angling. You've got to work out.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly what you're doing. I mean, I got a tip off a friend of mine. He was using I'll call it an organic acid preparation because I never give other people's secrets away. And I put it on my hook baits, and it's made a big difference. Right, I'll clarify that. I've put it on my food bait pop-ups, and it's made a big difference. I do something else in my bottom baits, but I've not been able to fish bottom baits apart from when I'm fishing the arse end, or I use my bottom baits I use on Grenville, which are also, if they're going in a solid bag, then they're completely different from my food bait pop-ups.
And this is an organic acid.
Yeah, it was a blend of organic acids. It's something you can buy, but there's a blend of organic acids, and I just put it on my food bait pop-ups, because my food bait pop-ups are highly gelled, and then I air dry them for 5 days, and they'll stay popped up for 2 days. I make cork dust with them, but the problem is when you've air dried them for 5 days, nothing there's no leak off them at all. So the only way to get leak off is to soak them. But if you soak a pop-up, you knacker the buoyancy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what I do is I air dry them so they're like absolute bullets, and then they go in like, I keep them in a sludge. And the only thing I've added to that sludge is this organic acid spray. But it has made a difference, because in that sludge there was like an amino liquid, some vodka, some spices, some liver, some high nucleate yeast, and some fermented fish. That was on the outside of my pop-ups, and then they used to work. But then I've also added this organic acid spray, and it works even better now.
So for the people that are going to message me about this organic acid combination, is there anything else you can say about it or not?
But no, just try different things. It just works. What I'm saying is it's not just that, because also in that sludge I've got everything else. I've got high nuke yeast, I've got chicken liver hydrolyzed powder, I've got some spices, I've got an amino liquid.
Sorry, that's just come to me actually. Something else, a lot of people say, you mentioned hydrolyzed liver in the last podcast several times, didn't you?
Well, I said I reckon that hydrolyzed chicken liver is good, and you said it's nothing compared to hydrolyzed beef liver, and I said, yeah, but I can't really get hydrolyzed beef liver that easily, but I still think chicken liver hydro is a good product. And then when you had the podcast with Dave Moore, he said chicken liver hydro is a good product.
Yeah, I quite agree. So,
but I also said in the context of, if you put chicken liver hydro powder in a base mix with other things like Brocacel, CPS P90, potentially keramine, how much extra is the hydrolyzed beef liver adding over the chicken liver, given how much is in? And you said, well, you thought a lot. And I said, well, I think the chicken liver hydro is good enough. I mean, years ago, I got some beautiful liver powder off Mark McKenna. I bought 20 kilos of liver powder off him. Went to the 2013 angling show.
Beef.
He showed me this liver powder, and it was like God's own liver powder. I said, right, 20 kilos of that, young man. Do you know what I mean? But since then, the only thing I've been able to get hold of easily is the chicken liver hydro powder. And that was what was in the liver fish meal, which I had the Randall on. The slope 3 times. I literally, on my first 3 seasons of Actor, the biggest fish in the top lake, the slope, I had it 3 seasons, but 3 times in 18 months on the same bait.
Are you using any fish meal other than the CPSB 90?
Not at the moment, no, because I'm using my colour bait. That's not to say I wouldn't use a fish meal, because it's worked. Like these fish meals where I fish them have worked unbelievably well.
Yeah.
For certain fish, but I keep getting repeats because of the preferences of the fish. Seems to be certain baits, like you do a heavy fish meal, you'll catch certain fish, and they're highly desirable, but you'll keep catching those fish because they like that bait. Whereas, like now, like I said, I've gone on to this new bait. Within 362 days less than a year, I've had big pecks 3 times on the same bait. I had it twice in 2 weeks. Last season, of the 10 fish I wanted, I had 6 of them, and 5 of them I had slice in the same season. All 18 members. So it's the preferences. The fish like certain things, and then when you find out what that is, then you can keep catching them. But I don't want to keep catching them. Really, I want the ones I can't catch.
Yeah.
So it's then tailoring that. I mean, so if you're not obsessed with bait or catching certain fish, then you might just want a general good bait that you can take anywhere and catch fish on. And I think a fish meal, you know, the ones that John Baker says they're all the same, I still think there's a lot of mileage in those baits. To get a standard recipe, you can take it anywhere. It's leagues better than what most people are using, and it will catch most fish on most lakes. I'm particularly, especially on accent, I'm fishing for fish that are over 30 years old, highly pressured, the best anglers in the country. But I would have never got an accent 20 years ago because I didn't know anybody. I was a noddy. You know, the who's who of the carp fishing world fish there, they have educated those fish. You name a name from 20 years ago, they probably had a dabble on accent. Frank Warwick was on there, Alan Taylor, Dave Moore, you know, loads of famous Kevin Maddox was on there. That's the caliber of angler who've been fishing for those fish for the best part of 30 years. They clued up fish, they pressured fish. So if you can, I think I can find preferences to what I can catch them on. You know, like you mentioned farriers before. If I was going on farriers, I'd be on particle and nut mix, given that there's commons there. I'd be using a nut mix turned, a high yeast nut mix, turning it, soaking it in the particle juice and spotting out particle. I don't know farriers. I've never fished it, but that is the approach I would go in because it's full of big commons. There's no way I'd be using a fish meal on there. No chance. It'd be a high tiger nut, potentially full fat peanut in warmer water, in the boilie, and then particle. And soaking the boilies in the particle juice, and that's what would be going out. There wouldn't be any fish meal in a bait I put out on farriers.
Which you'd think, I mean, fish meal, incredible nutritional source. There's big fish there. What do they need? What do big fish need? They need to sustain their weight. They need to be efficient. They need to digest the food. Just everything screams, well, a good quality fish meal, doesn't it?
But on most waters, it works.
Yeah, but why not there?
Because they're commons.
Yeah, but commons still have that need,
don't
they?
They still do, but I would still go in with the nut mix because when I fished with a brighter bait, and certainly in certain temperatures, nut mix is just outfished for commons. They do absolutely rinse Selby on a nut mix, and I could not catch. There was about 2/3 mirrors and 1/3 commons on there, and I could not catch a common over 20 pounds. Caught the stockies, but I could not catch them. And my fish meals were good. Some of them had full fat GLM in. They were really good fish meals. LT fish meals, CPSP 90. You know, even the start of that, I had the original L030 in it. Absolutely amazing bait with stuff you can't get anymore. Like I had paste L030 and the liquid L030 in the baits on there, and I could not catch the commons. I was like top rod or second top rod nearly every season, all fucking mirrors. So I went on the the enzyme nut mix, and bang, I had the second biggest common 3 times. I never had the biggest common. I lost it on a tiger nut. I had the second biggest common 3 times, and I had all the other all the other big commons twice in one season from not catching them. So there's no way I would use a fish meal on something like farriers because experience has shown me that it just works. Nut mixes, things like that. Same with Grenville. There's very, very few commons in Grenville, whereas I've had two mid-30 commons, way out of proportion with the number of commons in there on the golden balls, the fight mix. It's statistically unlikely.
So let's stick with farrier. By the way, just for the listener, we haven't mentioned tip of the episode. I've had about 10 beers. I'm fucking 3 sheets to the wind.
That's why you can never remember anything.
No, and I'm probably exactly. Oh yeah, all these podcasts I'm always pissed up on, unfortunately, which I get a lot of people messaging angrily about. But yeah, I'm. So apologies if I'm slurring my words. Let's stick with farriers then, because it's a very interesting. It's a very fucking unique proposition, isn't it, in terms of waters goes, because it is a lot of commons,
very big commons.
Very big commons. As far as I'm aware, very few mirrors. It's an unusual lake, isn't it? So, but at the same time, I believe it's not a low stock lake. So there's plenty of fish in there. So you're basically saying, let's flip it on its head. You're saying that you would not fish meals because you want to target the commons, blah, blah, blah. Let's say you wanted to target the mirrors in a lake.
There was a beautiful linear in there. I remember seeing
dead,
pictures.
Isn't it?
I'm not sure if it's still there now. I don't know anything about farriers, to be fair, but I remember seeing pictures a few years ago of an absolutely stunning linear. So if I was targeting that, then I'd go and fish meal. I don't care how many commons are in the lake. If I was going after the mirror, then I'd be on a fish meal.
Yeah.
All day. Same with your lake, your theoretical lake of X amount of acres with these stunning old carp in them. If those stunning old carp were mirrors, then all day I'd be straight on a fish meal.
See, here's what I would do, rightly or wrongly. That the hypothetical lake, which I may or may not have fished. I would just go in with fish meals, because that is what that's just what I'm used to using. That's what I've used for, not in the early days, but most of my sort of like what I would say more serious angling years. I've used a good quality fish meal, which I've rolled myself, and it's changed, but that's what I would use. Nowadays, I am obviously recent years very much into milk proteins. I have theories about bigger fish and milk proteins, and there's a lot I could talk about on that, but I don't want to bore people.
You remember when I sent you the bait what had been analysed?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Two of the lads who've caught the most fish have used that bait.
Which, by the way, if you look at the paper on that bait, and we won't name it for obvious reasons, and there's no point messaging me because I'm not going to name it. Easy to shit over it, isn't it? But actually, that bait has caught a lot of fucking fish.
But,
from not only your lakes down my way on the water park. But
it's not discriminatory. It catches everything what swims.
Yes.
But also, did you see Nurge's breakdown of the organic acids on it?
No. What's that?
Well, I sent the paper written analysis. Where he just basically the lad who had it analysed did the macros, didn't he? The protein, the fat, the carbohydrate, and the pH.
Yeah, I'm possibly missing part of this analysis then.
Well, later I got sent a sheet, and all it showed was ascorbic acid, lactic, acetic, and citric. He said possibly ascorbic. Yeah, it had some acetic acid in it, some lactic acid in it.
Can you send that to me? Is that all right?
I'll try and find it. It's somewhere.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that if you can. Yeah.
Well, I think it's spectroscopic analysis, but basically that's just the organic acids. but that ties into what I'm saying about certain baits. From my point of view, like my baits are big fish baits, out and out big fish baits, and I will tailor because I catch far more bigger fish than I do smaller fish. Whereas the lads using other commercial baits like key baits and this one we're talking about, they just get numbers, and along the way they will catch a certain amount of big fish because the lake's got big fish in them. But it's not discriminatory, whereas what I do, so it's different on Grenville because there's just packs of fish, so you catch what's in front of you. But on a lake like Acton, where you've got, at the moment, you've got 50, 60 big originals and 150 stockies, I should be catching 5 stockies for every original. Whereas last season I had 15 originals and 9 stockies.
Yeah.
That is highly and of those 15 originals, 5 of them were 40s and 3 of them were 38 plus, which were normally 40s but were down in weight. So what I'm saying is I potentially, in the past, there would have been 8 40s out of 15 fish, which is just statistically, it doesn't add up. But what I'm saying is that's where I'm at. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Is what I'm saying. Whereas even if commercial baits are good, they're not discriminatory because a big bait company can't afford to have a bait what's discriminatory. It's just got to catch fish because you've got anglers using it on somewhere like Linear or a club water or whatever. All commercial baits can't be discriminative. They've just got to be attractive to all sizes of fish. And that is where I think the home roller can really capitalise because you can tailor once you get into it, you can tailor everything to what or at least attempt to tailor everything to what you want to catch, whether it's commons, mirrors, old fish, greedy fish. If you know what their preferences are, you can stack the odds to some extent in your favour.
Exactly. Whereas the commercial outfit, like this guy that we're talking about, or the bait company we're talking about, and any bait company, that their bait has to catch over a whole multitude of lakes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It has to catch down.
Bust, aren't they?
It has to catch at the 5 acre runs water with 200 carp in it or more, just as much as it does at the fucking 500 acre with
your theoretical lake with its 40 fish in. It's got to work on there, hasn't
it? Yeah. Or less fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And I don't knock anybody who can catch so many fish on a commercial bait. You've got to A, respect their ability, and B, that's got to be a good bait.
Do you know what you should do, Stephen? They're totally fucking switching gears now. Totally off topic. Last podcast, me and Dean spoke about going for a social / bait off down.
Yeah.
I can't remember what fucking water it was. One of his waters. You should come along.
Yeah. If I can fit it inside. My only problem is because I can't long-term plan, which is why I never go on holiday because I've got to work around certain other commitments. So I can't say in 3 months' time I can fish on a Sunday. I will only know when I can fish within 2 weeks.
Didn't you say you always fished like Sunday to Tuesday?
No. What happens is that I end up doing ideally I want to fish Sunday to Tuesday, but then my commitments change that after about 3 weeks, then I'll probably end up doing a Tuesday to a Thursday. Then I'll end up probably doing a Thursday the week after, probably potentially a Thursday to a Saturday. And then I might end up missing a week and then getting back to Sunday to Tuesday to accommodate my commitments. So if I don't fish every week, Sunday to Tuesday, it ends up, for a few weeks, I might fish 2 nights every 10 days until it rolls back. The reason I like fishing Sundays is because the road down to Acton's quiet on a Sunday morning.
Do you mind me asking what do you do for a living?
Yeah, well, I don't talk about my private life. You know what I mean? Just I don't talk about it. But what I'm saying is the reason I try and fish Sunday is because of traffic. Because I'm travelling so far, traffic's just a nightmare. If I'm going down to Grenville in a weekday or a weekend, I mean, coming back on a bank. The last time I went to Grenville, it took me 4.5 hours to get back.
Mm.
So if it's a shit journey down, that's a 9 hour. To do 2 nights, there's 9 hours driving there.
Yeah.
So that's why I try and arrange my timing around what's best for traffic. So then sometimes it doesn't pan out. So then you just got to put up with what you got to put up with.
This is the problem with living where you live, and I'm all too familiar with this. It's difficult, isn't it?
Well, there's a lot of northern lads. There's loads of northern lads on Acton. There's loads of northern lads on Grenville. There's loads of Manchester lads on Girton. All these good syndicates. You've got lads, a lot of them from the Manchester area, Preston, Liverpool, because we haven't got the carp fishing. Somewhere like Acton, you don't get any southern lads coming up. You get lads from Wales. Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, potentially. Loads of lads from Manchester, Preston, Liverpool, Chester. But you don't get southerners come, Same with Girton. You don't get lads coming from down south to Girton because you've got all the southern water. Whereas there's everybody's travelling from the north down, the serious anglers, because the waters are there.
Well, until you get me my guest session, I guess.
There's no guest.
And there'll be a southern lad on there, won't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on Grenville, there's a lad who comes up from Cornwall. I think there's a couple of lads who come up from Cornwall.
Yeah, I don't live in Cornwall, just to let you know.
No, but I'm just saying, when you were talking about living in Cornwall before, I think these lads are looking at about 7 hours or something to get to Grenville.
Oh, fucking brutal. Oh, yeah. Grenville is...
Huntingdon Racetrack.
Sorry?
Huntingdon Racetrack.
That don't mean nothing. What county is that in?
Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, Cornwall to Cambridgeshire. I mean, as I said...
That's a savage journey, isn't it?
It's a fucking brutal journey.
Yeah,
I live in the Cotswolds now, so not too far for me. But I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't fish there anyway.
But you've got a lot of waters in the Cotswolds, haven't you? You've got some decent club waters around there. I've heard rumours of.
There's some water. Sorry,
there's a couple of decent club waters around there, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, the Cotswold Water Park. So just to sort of backtrack a little bit, I don't want to go into it too much, but I used to ride. I mean, I grew up around Cirencester when I was a little kid. Before I moved to Cornwall, I used to ride around those pits. I used to fish those pits for little roach rudd, silvers, and they've changed a lot. But it's always been a big draw. Obviously, we had Ashmead here, and obviously that's no longer. But yeah, there's a certain vibe around the Cotswold Water Park. It's an interesting place to fish and to live, and yeah, there's some interesting waters.
Which you've got all the Oxford waters are not that far away. I know they're absolutely mob now, but back in the day, they were sort of some pretty good waters, weren't they, in the Oxfordshire area?
Yeah, I mean Oxfordshire's not that far at all. There's some amazing waters around. It's more low stock pit fishing around here. It's very different from what you're used to. But this is the beauty. I mean, you go to different pockets of the UK and you'll find different types of fishing. You are up fucking north. I understand where you're coming from. It's fucking difficult, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Just to get to Acton, you are like, which is fuck, I'm trying to think of the county. Begins with S. Can't remember. Anyway, it's a long.
Greater Manchester to Shropshire is 2 hours on a good run.
Shropshire. It's a long fucking trek.
Well, it's 2 hours on a good run.
Yeah. It's fucking
on a Sunday morning when it's quiet.
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult, and it reminds me of when I used to live in Cornwall, but I don't know. Those were some of the best angling years that I ever had, because I was going to the local places, the unfished pit, and they were genuinely unfished. Just fishing for what was there. And yeah, sure, we were fishing for upper 20s, but back in that day, it didn't really matter because they were huge fish to us.
Yeah,
I mean,
when you talk about that, I used to travel to Cheshire, which was 40 miles each way, up until 2010. I didn't have my first 20 till 2006. It took me 10 years to catch my first 20-pound fish.
Yeah.
And that was traveling 40 miles each way to Cheshire.
Do you know what? Anything over 25 to me is a fucking big fish. It is.
Well, it is, depending on the water.
It depends on the water. Yeah, of course, you could go to a water and it's like, well, they're 10 a. Yeah, I get that, but
on a low stock, it's like last season. One of my favourite fishes was 22 pounds 12 ounces. I had a fish called the Little Fully, which is like an original out of Acton. It was spawned out. It normally does 25s, 26 maybe. But it's an original laney, fully scaled. There's 2 of them in there. And they were in before Rob took the water over in 92.
Exactly.
They were there in the 80s when Maddox was fishing it before Rob got it. And there's two of them in that lake.
Exactly. And exactly.
And there's a cricket bat laney, which is the same age. It's 20 pound, and I would give my left bollock to catch it, and I cannot catch it. It's 20 pound, and it's absolutely stunning. It's just carp porn. It's 20 pound, which these days is just all the stockies are over. Well, not all of them, but a lot of the stockies they're hitting 30 pound now. And you know, you unhook them in the mat, but I unhook them in the net, but that 20 pound lane, I would give my left nut to catch that. Right, it's getting late.
It is getting late, mate.
How long have we been doing this now?
Fucking long time. I would say 7:30.
Well, by the time
nearly 4 hours.
Cool.
Anything else you want to say? Do you want to round it up?
No, I think we've more or less been down about every rabbit hole we possibly could.
I'll tell you what. Last question for you, if I may, if you don't mind. You're obviously on the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
How do you cook on the bank? What does that look like? How do you make it work for you?
Grass-fed steak, cooked in butter, sockeye salmon, cooked in butter, 4 to 6 pasture-raised eggs. Try and get it before 12 noon so I don't get meat sweats at night. So I literally smash all my food, probably 250 grams of protein, a couple of 100 grams of fat, all in one meal at the moment. Everything cooked in raw butter. Smash it all down my fat face and don't eat for 24 hours.
Are you doing this on like a ridge monkey, on a barbecue?
No, just a stove and a frying pan. I must be the only angler in Britain who's never owned a ridge monkey. It's just a frying pan from Tesco, grass-fed steak, whacked in the butter, bang. God's own food. The steak I'm getting from a farm in Cheshire is just next level. The only thing I put on it is salt, Himalayan salt.
Do you use a sauce or not?
No, literally all I eat, no spice, no pepper, literally salt and cooked in butter. The steak, basically because it's grass-fed, it's so rich. The fat content is so rich in flavour, which is the flavonoids out of the, everything in what's come out of the grass is in the steak. It's like nothing you've ever tasted. It sets off parts of your brain that I didn't know could be set off from eating steak.
There's a lot of omega-3s in grass-fed steak as well.
Exactly.
I know that.
Yeah. They reckon the ratio of omega-6 to 3 is 2 to 1, which in grain-fed, the shit you get from a supermarket, they reckon the omegas is 9. You know, you've got 9 times more omega-6 than you have in omega-3. But it's not only that. If you feed beef grains, then there's all the flavor components what come out of the plants aren't in the meat, so the meat just tastes bland and shit. So then you've got to put sauces on them. Whereas this, literally, I put just salt on it, and it is just god level flavor. And if you get sometimes you get the ex dairy, basically the animals they've used for milk and cheese and cream. When the milk production goes down this slaughter run for beef, the ex dairy is just, some of it is just unbelievable. The fat is almost like buttery. Basically, I've not eaten any carbs for a year, so the only energy source is fat. So when you're eating steak 5 to 7 days a week, it's got to be god level steak. You can't eat the garbage you get from a supermarket 7 days a week. You just end yourself because it's horrible. But I can literally eat steak 7 days a week because it's just god level steak.
Stephen, pleasure. Always a
definitely.
fucking pleasure to talk to you. I always learn something. So yeah, thank you very much. Psst. If you're still here and you happen to be listening on the Apple Podcast app or Apple iTunes, please take a few moments, leave me a review, let me know how we're doing with this podcast. A, it's really nice to hear from you, and B, it helps this podcast stay relevant and stay in the ratings. If it doesn't stay in the ratings, it falls behind, people don't listen to it, and obviously that means there's not much point me doing it anymore. So if you can take a moment to leave me a review, I'd really appreciate it. If you're not listening on an Apple device, I don't think you can leave us a review unless there's some means that I'm not aware of, but nonetheless, I appreciate you listening. It does mean a lot to me. And feel free to reach out on social media. That's it. I look forward to bringing the next episode to you very soon.